Hey everybody, I'm Neal Ronaghan, and welcome to Nintendo World Report TV for a special Nintendo News Report in which we're going to talk about Pokemon Sun and Moon and our reviews that went up on the website, NintendoWorldReport.com, today. It's November 15th, and I'm joined by the two men who reviewed Pokemon. We got our sunny Alex Culafi
Why, hello there.
and our moonstruck Daan Koopman.
Well, that's kind of true because it's 4 a.m. here. So, hello,
It kind of
everybody.
worked out. Although it's dark in my parts too. So
Sorry.
we're all living the thug moon life right now.
Yep.
So what we're gonna do, I guess, just a little bit here. We're still bound by some embargoes, but Alex and Don have both finished the game. I'm 20 hours in right now, and
Okay.
we're gonna talk about it. And if you are in the chat, we will answer your questions. So let's go. Don, let's start with you. You have a scored review up on the site.
Yep.
Kind of what's sum up your feelings on Pokemon Moon.
So, I think that the world they created is really great. I felt like I enjoyed walking through it, and I just kept going for that game. But there were moments where I stopped from, this doesn't feel right, especially that comes down to the story. I don't feel that the story is all that great. And next to that, it's a bit on the easier side. And while I found some challenges at some points in auras, I don't think that X and Y was all that challenging either, but I really felt it during the grind of Sun and Moon sometimes, which was an annoyance. And the final thing I would say that I don't really liked about the game was when I did double battles, like the frame rate chugged like crazy, and I don't know why that was because
Weren't there similar issues with that with X and Y? I seem to remember having a slowdown
not
there.
as much, not
X
as
and Y
much.
chugged more often than it didn't, if we're being
Yeah.
honest.
That's true.
Yeah, like I mean, my
But-
experiences with Sun and Moon, and granted, I played a little bit of Y a couple months ago. Just I got the Pokemon itch, and I had to suppress it somehow. It's been a while since I played through all of X and Y, but I remember like grimacing at technical issues there to a lesser or to a greater degree than I've been grimacing at technical issues in Sun and Moon.
Right.
Sure, but when compared to X and Y, I would say that double battles didn't chuck as much as they do here. And
Were you playing it? Or were you playing it on a new
becomes kind of
3DS?
blatant. I was playing it on a new
Yeah, I was
3DS.
as well. Alex, were you playing the game on a new 3DS?
I was playing it on a new 3DS XL. I thought the game ran technically better than it did in X and Y because I actually, like about a week or two ago, I picked up X and Y again just so I would get an accurate mental vision of what those games were actually like before picking up Sun and Moon, which made me appreciate Sun and Moon a lot more in some ways. But what I'll say is, those battles run at a strong 13 FPS at best. And I think these games run better, and it's no surprise that the 3D is completely off for almost all the game. Because even with the 3D off, you're right, the double battles do have a tendency to chug just a little bit more than they should.
Yeah, they especially, I can't really talk about those parts of the game, but especially if you go into the post-game stuff and you go into like those double battles, it really chugs a lot. And a
Yeah,
lot,
I
a
haven't
lot.
run into that many double battles. I mean, it seems like the ones where kind of introduced more of those gimmicky battles. It seems like less in the story of Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
Sure. And to talk a bit more positive, I think that the battle mechanics are as fun as ever, and they look really sleek with that redesigned menu on top. I think the characters are super charming.
All of the little UI tweaks that they made, like how you can just see what's effective and not effective after you fight a Pokemon for the first time. Like, you don't even need to capture it to be able to go in the Pokedex and see what type it is.
Sometimes. Do you notice that sometimes it doesn't display that stuff?
I haven't noticed it at all.
I noticed that
I have
sometimes.
not noticed it either.
Maybe it's just something in my game, or maybe something I'm doing wrong. But sometimes I will open up the moves, and I won't see the super effective. But I also agree, for the most part, the UI stuff is way better.
Yeah, and I think it also ties into that I like the C moves a lot too. I didn't think
I
much
like them
of
better
them.
than Mega Evolutions. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't think much of them before, like pre-launch, but they were really cool. Especially those animations are incredible.
And like all the dumb dances that so for people who are completely unaware, which if you're completely unaware, don't know why you're watching a review discuss. Well, I guess I don't know. Maybe I don't know. If you're here and you don't know anything about Pokemon, great. That's awesome. So I'll explain that there used to be these things called gyms in Pokemon games, but
Never again. There will never be a gym in a Pokemon game as long as
maybe
you
in a
live.
sequel. Like there's all these random empty lots throughout the towns that look like, a gym could go real well right in that spot.
And I still don't know what they're for.
Yeah,
Either
but then
after
there's,
finishing it.
there's like crap with like the Battle Frontier and what was that, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, where they're just like coming soon. And then,
Well, I think based on the way the story plays out, the way sequel games for this would go actually seems very straightforward. It's no secret that the entire, like, a lot of the premise of the story is that there's no Pokemon League, and that there is story stuff about them trying to create a Pokemon League, which was in the pre-release materials, I remember, especially in the last few weeks. So where a sequel would go is it would maybe be... It could be a Pokemon League, and I'm not saying that based on endgame stuff because I don't know, but I'm saying like it could become more of a Pokemon League, or they might be some weird hybrid league, which in itself, the Totem Trial challenges are already a lot like gym battles, except they're just micro gyms and there's no people you're fighting. Just wild Pokemon.
Yeah, but I do love, like every trial, which is the thing that replaced gyms, there's like a layer of goofiness that I feel wasn't present in any gym battle, where it's like in one you're like collecting food, and then like you make this meal, and then the Pokemon sneaks up behind you, and you're like, oh no, it's a battle. And then there's another time where it's just like, I don't know, there's a bunch of Marowaks dancing. What's up with that? Like,
do you remember in the original Pokemon games, Red and Blue and Yellow, Blaine's Gym? And in Blaine's Gym, it would be this thing where you would have to answer this quiz, and if you get it right, you don't really have to fight much of anyone, but if you get it wrong, then you have to battle something. These trials are almost like an expanded take on that idea.
I think there was they definitely have done this also before with a gym where you have to go to different doors as well, and if you go to certain doors, you don't have to battle that much.
Yeah.
So they definitely experimented with that stuff before, but they're taking it to the extremes here, which, it's.
I'm gonna make a stretch with how I feel about the trials, but it's something that at least when I played through it, it really stuck out to me. It kind of reminds me of Skyward Sword, in that. How Skyward Sword had that whole idea of like the dungeons and the overworld are become one. Like it kind of feels like there. I mean, there's I won't point out specifically what it is, but there's even an early trial where like you go through it and then they're just like, oh yeah, psych, you're in the trial now, and it like very organically happens. Like these, like it's more that like you're exploring the world and you happen to come upon these. Then less so than where it's just like, here's this specific place in this town that you have to go to in order to progress. They hide it a little more.
That's one of my favorite moves in modern video games is when like it's a surprise mission that you're in. It's Metal Gear Solid 5 has one of the most famous examples, and then Pokemon does it, Zelda does it now, and then they're also presumably going to be doing it a lot next year. It's one of the things games have started doing in one of the last two or 3 years, and I think it's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So someone's asking in the chat about the difficulty, and Don, you kind of touched on that a little bit, but I guess Alex, how do you feel about the difficulty? Because I know that you've kind of critiqued Pokemon games in the past.
It's been my main critique of Pokemon games for maybe the last 5 years, is how their difficulty has gone. I would say Black and White was the last Pokemon game to offer any kind of remote challenge whatsoever in a lot of cases. Black and White 2 was easier. X and Y was really easy. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was, I would say, the easiest Pokemon games ever. And then Sun and Moon, It starts giving you a little bit of challenge. It gets really easy for about a long portion of the game. It does make a difficulty spike at some point later in the game, close to maybe some stuff we're not allowed to talk about yet, but there is a bit of a difficulty spike later in the game that I thought was very apparent. And I won't say that it's a hard game. The game will offer you almost no resistance. I didn't die once until the post-game, and that was because it was a battle I was woefully unprepared for. But I will say, from my perspective, as someone who's playing with the EXP share on for the first time and played with it off in both Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and X and Y, I would call Sun and Moon slightly harder games. Not hard, slightly harder.
I kind of disagree with that, though, because I found some challenge in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire at moments.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Neal?
For me, I first off, I did not play Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire, so I can't comment on that. Sun and Moon has definitely been more challenging than X and Y. I've played it the same way, where I rock the XP share because what I liked about the XP share so much in X and Y was it kind of encouraged me to more screw around with my team. Like, subbing people in and out, trying Pokemon I probably wouldn't commit to as I get later in the game. And I'm doing that the same in Sun and Moon, and I really enjoy that. But playing that way, Sun and Moon has been way harder than X and Y, in my estimation. And I think some of that has to do, it seems like there might even be better AI, or because there are trainers out there that are specifically ace trainers that use Z moves and have a lot of full restores and crap like that. And they seem to actually respond to type disadvantages and things like that.
The AI is better in this game remarkably than I would say previous games. Though the one shining example of this is the use of moves like Stealth Rock and Spikes, which would normally be in the competitive circuit most of all. Lay down three layers of spikes, so whenever you send a Pokemon in, it'll end up losing 20% of its health automatically. Trainers know that technique in this game.
Yeah.
And I was super impressed by that. The most impressive stuff in this game is the little stuff. It's like that. It's also the fact that when trainers throw out Pokemon, it's always a different Pokeball, which I don't know if that was new, but I became more apparent this time.
That's new. That's absolutely new.
Okay, wasn't that cool? I thought that was cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah. Okay. What were you saying?
I think that the battle stuff itself, like how it looks and how it's laid out, is really, really good.
But Neal, let me tell you about where I'm at on Pokemon Sun and Moon at this point.
Go for it.
Because I have a review in progress. When I wrote the review, I had not beaten the game. And when it's a Pokemon game, I don't think a Pokemon game can properly be reviewed until you experience the post-game at least a little bit and know how much content there is. Because I said this in the review, or almost review itself, a Pokemon game is defined by its post-game in the modern era, as far as I'm concerned, in a lot of ways.
I would, I'm going to interrupt you there and say that I disagree with that slightly because of how kind of unique and new the story progression in Sun and Moon is. I would say when everything was 8 gyms and the Elite Four, then the post-game mattered way more.
2 years ago, a Pokemon game is defined by its post-game.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
I still think that a post-game and if a Pokemon game just ends and then there's nothing to do, regardless of how much stuff they do on the front end, it's still kind of a big problem to me. To me. Maybe not to everyone, but to me. But overall, as someone who was not too fond of X and Y, especially looking in the rearview mirror, and as someone who might argue that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are the weakest games in the series, Sun and Moon are good Pokemon games. These are two of the good ones to me, and let me tell you why. The game totally redefines what it means to be a Pokemon game. Between the trials, which are kind of like gyms, but not like gyms, but there are things like gyms, but then there are not gyms. It basically places a focus on the region itself, more than any game in the past has done. And every decision it makes feels like it's in service of the region. For instance, you got the riding Pokemon now, which fully replace HMs. You can ride a Tauros, and then that's Rock Smash. And you didn't think Rock Smash would be fun, but now it's the most fun thing to do in the game. Which goes in service of the fact that Alola is a region that it's about the Pokemon. It's a region that's about wildlife, and they make this game very wildlife centric. In that Pokemon, the way the wild Pokemon encounters are spread out, it's natural. Like, you'll find the same Pokemon across 3 routes, but not other routes. And Pokemon now feel more like wildlife. The fact that Pokemon can summon other Pokemon from the wild to fight with them makes it feel more like a real animalistic thing.
Someone asked in the chat, have you guys attempted to SOS chain to get rare Pokemon / hidden abilities / increased shiny rate?
I have not done any. I don't even know what that is.
I mean, SOS is when Pokemon call for other Pokemon. I have heard some stuff about how you can ridiculously chain that. You can get I had Predator Pokemon show up when I think it was in 10 Carat Hill on the first island, where I had a Sableye come and just destroy the Pokemon that it was against. That summoned it. I was so confused with it.
That happened a few times to me. And I found it really funny, but I used that a few times to get a few Pokemon here. There's actually an item that encourages that too, that the Pokemon will call more.
The Adrenaline Bell or something?
The Adrenaline Orb.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got a Chansey that way very early in the game.
Yeah. I've seen some stuff online of people getting real powerful Pokemon in the first island that aren't naturally habited there.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do, but once you string it together, it feels so satisfying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a good game. I like the way the region is designed because Pokemon feel more like wildlife, and this feels more like a living, breathing world. I think the game is slightly harder, although me and Don may have our disagreements over that. I think the region is beautifully constructed, and I think the fact that it's a completely different kind of region works to its advantage. I think the story, the parts that aren't the trials, the stuff that surrounds the story, it starts extremely promising and then leaves me a little high and dry at the end.
I think the best parts about the story is when Lily is involved.
Yeah, Lily's the game's Lily, and Hal, is he your friend?
Yeah.
I think even Hal is not that important to me.
But he's the second most important character in the game. He's
this dude that shows up, and then I beat up his Pikachu every now and then.
And then you have a way more badass rival who shows up, which what's his face? This one isn't a secret. It's the guy who has type null.
Yeah.
Ladion.
He ends up being really cool, but you have to deal with Hal, who kind of sucks. I agree. Lily's the one really good character in the game. I like the professor a lot too.
It's not even your story. It's Lily's story.
It's Lily's world. We all just live in it.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, you're just.
we're just in Lily's adventure.
So going off the story, there's a lot more of a cinematic touch. Someone's asking in the chat about did that make a difference?
Yes. It's absolutely made a difference.
Somewhat,
the stuff you saw in X and Y, they crank that up by about 4 notches in this game. It's the way that they tried to do a narrative story there, but there wasn't really a story in X and Y, so there wasn't really much of a stuff to do that cinematic stuff with. There's more of a story in this game, and they do try to take advantage of it. I would say if the story was stronger, this game would be completely indistinguishable from a console JRPG in a lot of ways.
Have you played a console JRPG lately? The stories are never really a strong suit there.
I don't know. I guess it depends what you want out of a story, because Tokyo Mirage Sessions is the best story of the year as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, this ain't got nothing on that, but as far as story goes...
3DS JRPGs, maybe there's not much to compete with.
It's weird, because I would say that there's super strong comparisons to be made between this game and 7th Dragon 3. Which I really liked, but it's just the way, because it's the same kind of setup where it's just that you create your own character, and there's just some little girl that follows you around, and she's actually way more important than you.
That's actually a really good point.
The last thing I want to say about this game is that this feels like Pokemon at its most confident. I would say the last few Pokemon games, they've had a problem where they keep trying to shoehorn one or two gimmicky mechanics, but they don't fully integrate them into the main game. Like take triple battles from Black and White, how it's in 2 battles, but they try to treat it like it's a big deal. The Battle Royale stuff, there are some gimmick stuff, but it's pushed to the side immediately. And the main game itself, it feels extremely confident. The Alolan Pokemon thing, they go in completely 100% in. The Z moves, once you get Z moves, it feels like they've always been in the series.
It fits in so well.
Yeah, and I think this game, it doesn't do that insecure Pokemon thing where they introduce a lot of gimmicky shit and then just like do it 3 times and then that's the end of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
This game feels like they knew exactly what kind of game they wanted to make, and they made it. That's what I like most about Sun and Moon. It feels confident.
Sure. I just think it's a damn good game. Someone in the chat just asked about the music. I think that the music is absolutely amazing. It's basically a lot of familiar Pokemon tunes with a fantastic island vibe.
Yeah,
so
I think my favorite tune in that entirety of that game is when you fight a Kahuna.
Yeah, no, the battle tracks are very, very good.
The Hawaiian acapella stuff is super awesome.
It's just fun. It's like there's a bouncy feel. Yeah, there's a bouncy feel to the whole game that I just really enjoy. Like I worried a little bit.
Grassland Groove. That's what the soundtrack feels like. Grassland Groove from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, no, and actually, I would say that there's probably some comparisons to be made between this soundtrack and the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze soundtrack.
If you told me that David Wise did select portions of the soundtrack, I would believe you.
Turns out him and Masuda go way back.
Did you know that David Wise worked on the original Pokemon game? He's waiting in line to be director after Omori does a few more games.
But anyway, I thought that the island theme would get very tired in this game because I like variety in my locales, but I think they did a very good job of differentiating the islands, kind of making each one feel unique. There's a lot of varied architecture in every area where it's just like, there's one that's a little more Asian, there's one that's a little more European, and I think that contributes to making the cohesive island vibe not be overwhelming.
Yeah, right. I would actually also argue that the island stuff gets better as you get deeper into the game.
Yeah,
like the second island is better exploration than the first island, the third than the second, and then the fourth. I won't say anything about the fourth island.
Yeah, we can't.
But I'm just saying the stuff I am allowed to talk about. Everything is better than the last.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the island stuff is cool. Okay, that's our show for this week.
Yeah. So yeah,
Pokemon. Meowth looks ridiculous.
So someone asked earlier in the chat about what's the spread between old and new Pokemon, and I think that it feels like there's way more focus on old Pokemon than new Pokemon, but they present old Pokemon in new ways. I think that the Alolan forms are really awesome, and even that with the old Pokemon and the new Pokemon, they kind of do a good job of like giving you a lot to start and then kind of slowly teasing them out throughout. Where there's some Alolan Pokemon that don't show up until later, and I think that's kind of cool. Where there's a bunch that you can get very early on. You can get like a Rattata, a Meowth, a Grimer, a Diglett. You can get that pretty early, and so you can have all these old 150 Alolan versions in your party if you so choose.
I'm disappointed there aren't more. Like, I feel like I see a Growlithe in the game, and I'm like, oh, I kind of wish there was an Alolan Growlithe. And I see other Pokemon, and I'm like, oh, I kind of wish there was an Alolan Hypno, because that seems like that would be a cool idea. It feels like I have no idea how many Alolan Pokemon there are in the game. but it feels like there's about 20% fewer than there should be. Like, they feel a little further and far between than they should to me. I don't know if you guys got the same vibe.
I don't exactly mind that, but it's telling that 4 of the 6 Pokemon I ended the game with were Pokemon from older games.
Yeah. You don't like the designs in the new game, Don?
You mean like the Pokemon designs? I think they're fine, yeah.
But I was just wondering so by the fact that you ended the game with 4 of 6 Pokemon being old Pokemon, is that, do you think that reflects how you feel about the new designs at all?
No, not exactly. It just depends on what I find more useful playing the game.
Yeah.
Because very early on, you get an option to trade a Machamp called Macho in Pokemon Moon, and I instantly did that. And because it's a trade Pokemon, that Pokemon will level up way faster. It's a really handy Pokemon to have. So
I have him. I have not used him.
And he never left my party from the moment I got him.
Yeah. I feel like if we're talking specifically about the old to new skew, 80% of the Pokemon you will counter are old Pokemon, and 90% of the Pokemon you will encounter are Pokemon you have seen before if you've been following the Pokemon press cycle even a tiny bit. I mean, it's the vibe I get.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how many Pokemon are in the game. I'm just saying if you want an idea of what to expect with how Pokemon are encountered, the skew of old Pokemon to new Pokemon, think X and Y. Like, it's very similar to the way X and Y was. Where there are
the feeling I'm getting as well.
300 Pokemon you can probably find in the wild just as you play the game. But so many of them are older Pokemon. And I appreciate the fact that they treat old Pokemon like new Pokemon, which is exactly what Masuda said in an interview, or Omori, or one of them said in a recent interview, is that we want to treat the old Pokemon the same as the new Pokemon, because that's how animals would be treated in real life. And I totally respect and identify with that feeling. But my favorite thing about a new Pokemon game is discovering new Pokemon and seeing how I can sort of fiddle around with these new Pokemon that I haven't seen before, and how what happens when I pit new Pokemon against new Pokemon using new mechanics against new mechanics. And I feel like this game, just like X and Y, gets a little further from that than I would like.
I understand that assessment. I don't really think it's all that necessary to me. But if you're really searching for a bigger ratio of new Pokemon, I totally understand.
It's why Black and White are 2 of my favorite games in the series. And
I love the bold thing that Black and White does, where it's just like all new Pokemon to start. Go.
Right. All new Pokemon until you beat the game in Black and White. Which is probably the reason why it is my favorite game since, I would say, Ruby and Sapphire. I would say Black and White...
Can I say something really honest? We're not going to draw on it too long. I don't like Black and White at all.
Okay, that's cool. Its Pokemon games are also made by Game Freak, who's one of the most talented developers in the world. So it's one of those things when someone shits on a Pokemon game I like, I'm like, they still made a great game. And when I shit on a Pokemon game, there's still that thing in the back of my head where it's still one of the best games that probably came out that year. It's just how it stacks up compared to other Pokemon games.
Yeah. Yeah, Dom, maybe you should be a part of our eventual generation warfare of picking the best generation.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
All right, but anyway.
But yeah, because
someone was asking about the map size. So we got the 4 islands. How do you guys think it kind of compares to past games, and does it feel small? Does it feel big?
It feels a tiny small.
It feels small in the back of your mind. I never sat down and thought about it, but afterwards it was sort of a small adventure, but I was okay with that.
It felt better than X and Y, and how X and Y felt like a region where you go in one straight line and then you beat the game. Sun and Moon, even though they're still very linear, even though the region it could be smaller, it still feels like a more enjoyable region to play in than X and Y
Yeah.
did. Because X and Y felt like Final Fantasy 13, just going down a corridor, and that's the entire game.
Yeah, my problem with Sun and Moon though is that you're always told where to go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason
There
not
are
to follow it because
waypoints.
there's
Yeah. There's
basic-
the red circle with the flag on it, and you follow that everywhere.
Makes it feel like an open world game. Even if it isn't, it still makes it feel like an open world game.
But my thing with that is that really bugged me until I realized that basically every Pokemon game has done that. They just haven't put a flag on the map.
Yeah.
There's still a sense of exploration about that I like more than just following a pointer.
But then, like, you can just go off and not follow the pointer and explore.
It's always there. It's always
But you
there.
can just ignore it. Like, that's what I just did on the third island. I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go back and see more of the second island.
For me,
I wanted to do there.
For me, it's kind of impossible. I look always at the bottom screen, so for me, it becomes really difficult, man.
Just if you see it on the right, go to the left, Don. You'll probably be blocked by a Sudowoodo, but who cares?
So let me ask you this then, Don. If you're someone who's always looking at the bottom screen, here's something that bothered me, and I want to know if it bothered you too. Does it bother you that the Rotom Pokedex is constantly blinking? Because it bothers me that it has a blink cycle in the same way other 3D models in a video game would. So sometimes I would just keep looking at the bottom screen to look at the blinking Rotom, and I would actually be paying less attention at the top screen. And it's probably something that will bother no one else, but it bothered me, and I would almost rather there were just 2 circles for eyes rather than a Rotom Pokedex that had a blink cycle on it.
I never really thought about that. That's a really good point.
Because it bothered the shit out of me, and then it made me conscious of my own blinking, and then I got that anxiety for a little while.
The game for me.
I ruined the game for everyone watching. But you know what? That's my job as a Pokemon.
Here's a question for you. Did you toy around with the Festival Plaza at all?
I went there once.
I need to look at it before I give the game a score. That's one of the things in the back.
I was gonna dye some clothes, but didn't yet.
Yeah, but it's also the hub where you will do all the trading and battling and that sort of stuff. So it's an important thing for sure.
Yeah.
What about a Pokepelago? We can talk about that, right?
I'm pretty sure we can.
Yeah.
It's.
I went there once and didn't really see much of a point to go back.
I put a lot of time into that, especially for collecting beans, because I give those a lot to the Pokemon. You can get some really good ones there that will raise the friendliness of a Pokemon insanely fast. So it's especially like develop the island where you can get those beans. The rest of them I barely touched, because I found that one the most important to develop Pokemon and get better with the game.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the designs in this game? Because I love a lot of them, and there are a lot of them I'm not allowed to talk about.
Yeah. We might have a follow-up. Someone asked if we could share our teams. I think sharing our teams would be breaking a lot of embargoes because we're not allowed to talk about...
I think there's only one Pokemon that I'm not allowed to talk about in my team.
I won't say anything about what this Pokemon is, but I will say there is one Pokemon that, as Neal and I have been talking about this game, that we have been talking back and forth. We've just been saying the same phrase back to each other. And do you remember...
It'll be the patron saint of Nintendo News Report once the embargo lifts on Friday.
Yes, that'll be our mascot. Will be
if Zach and Donald aren't on board, they're off the show.
It'll just be me and Neal.
You have to tell me what the Pokemon is after the show then, because I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So do you remember Hawlucha in X and Y and how that was by far the best Pokemon?
Yeah, Hawlucha's
the best
in that entire game. It's this game's Hawlucha. Is how I would. It's not a fighting flying.
No, let's just move on.
Okay, but I'm saying
on second thought, I can only talk about the 4 of the Pokemon because I cannot talk about the final evolution of one of the starters. But
yeah.
The 4 other Pokemon.
If people want to know about the ridiculousness of embargoes, you know how the final evolutions of the starters were officially announced. Technically, we can't talk about them in a review context.
Yep. But yeah, I directly picked up I have a Sylveon in my party. I have that Machamp in my party. I have Ask or Ninja in my party.
how do you get Ash Greninja? Like I did the demo and I totally forgot about it until literally right now.
You talk to the professor inside the Pokemon.
Talk to the professor inside the Pokemon Center, yeah.
In the demo, and you can. I haven't done it, but that's how you do it.
And it follows the trading rules, so that one also really gathers experience really fast.
What am I allowed to talk about? I can still say Beware is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Stuffle and Beware. So first off, like Stuffle is the stuffed animal bear Pokemon that when I found out that was in an area that I basically spent like 40 minutes trying to get it to come out. Yeah. And then I finally did, and that was when, Alex, I think that's the first time we talked when we were playing the game, and you're like, I got Beware in my party, it's great. I'm like, I have Stuffle, it's not that good. And then Stuffle evolved, and Beware is just a destroyer of worlds. Like normal fighting type, just taking fools down.
Because Beware looks like an anime joke character that doesn't belong in a Pokemon game at all. But then you use him, and he's this weird cross between, like, a Machamp and a Snorlax.
Yeah. It's weird. It's so... oh, God, he's so good. My other one is kind of almost... like, I feel like they're too similar as far as, like, how I use them, but they're both great. So to go with my Beware, I really like Mudsdale, who I haven't... I forget what it evolves into. I'm looking at... If you see my eyes darting off screen, it's because I'm looking at the list of Pokemon we can talk about to make sure I can talk about the right Pokemon.
Alolan Raichu, which we know exists. Everyone knows it exists.
Yes, we can.
Alolan Raichu is sick also. I have Alolan Raichu in my party because I raised it from a Pichu, which was a pain in the ass, but totally worth it. Because it's electric and psychic type, and it rides on a surfboard.
Yeah, when I get back to Pokemon Moon eventually, that's one of my goals, to get all of the Alolan Pokemon fixed up and then do some different stuff. But I had the goal to evolve the Pikachu into a Raichu, but I got kind of sidetracked by doing other stuff in the game.
Yeah, I'm working on getting a Pikachu up so that way I can evolve it into a Alolan Raichu. I like the idea that it's a electric psychic. Like that seems fun. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to. There's Vic of Charge-a-Bug is what I have right now. I haven't evolved it to third evolution yet, but that's the electric bug, and I was trying him out for a while, but didn't really dig him that much.
That third evolution is really sick.
Okay, then I'll because this is not. I guess I don't think we can talk about evolution methods, but yeah, I haven't done that yet, but
yeah,
I look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to mention that I totally forgot to talk about is even if we can have agreements or disagreements or whatever about the quality of the story, I would actually say in a lot of ways the writing has been boosted in a big way. I don't mean necessarily characters back and forth. I mean the Pokedex entries are awesome this time around. And I would say the dialogue gets a lot darker between some characters. I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, but there's some talk about like Pokemon hunting other Pokemon in detail. There's one kid who's standing outside a grave, and this is early in the game, so I'm allowed to talk about it. And he's like, are the people asleep forever when they go to the cemetery?
Oh God, it's so dark. There was always that kind of darkness in Pokemon. I mean, just think of the tower from Red and Blue. Like granted, like Game Boy text kind of limits that, but that gets heavy, and that's barely written.
But I would say this game is like that, but it's a realized version of that. It feels more realistic.
I think it's because like Pokédex entries used to be a bit rancier in like text and design. They kind of brought it back with Sun and Moon now, which I like.
Yeah. The Pokédex entries for normal Pokemon, like new Pokemon, are also awesome. There's one I want to talk about that I'm not allowed to because it's one of the Pokemon we can't talk about, but it has a Pokédex entry that I need to share with you guys after the show. Some of these are like genuinely funny in the same way old Pokemon descriptions were Rayquaza lived for 10 million years above the ozone layer. This one's like this one's talking about Raichu and how Pikachu needed to change its diet in order to become like the psychic type Pokemon, and how Rattata used to be like hunted by like these other Pokemon, Yungoos, and then it had to adapt and become nocturnal. Like there's this stuff that it's world building almost in the way, and not to compare Dark Souls to every single Pokemon game that exists. In the same way, Dark Souls item descriptions give you a lot of really helpful world building. The Pokédex descriptions really do make you feel closer to the world. And I will say this is the first game that has ever happened in.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to point out one more Pokemon, Alolan Dugtrio, which is just like 3 blonde thumbs.
That's Fabio the Pokemon.
Yeah, like it's weird, but they all have different haircuts. Like if you haven't seen it, the Alolan Dugtrio is just a Dugtrio with like blonde
Almond Brother
manes.
almost?
Yeah. But like the worst part about it is that I because I wanted to get the blonde Dugtrios, like I had to do it. And then I realized that Ground Steel is kind of a terrible typing.
Right. There's a lot of typing that sounds better in your head until you go to battle with something, and then you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Like I was like, this Dugtrio is totally going to take out this fire. Oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like one Pokemon that I really liked but never really used was Cabrawler.
So I saw Crabrawler to his conclusion, and something related to Crabrawler has a very
just shut up.
Crabrawler has an excellent Pokedex entry, and then he's not the only one. That's all. Okay.
Crabrawler Crabrawler annoys me because I think I forget what it was because I kind of dropped him like a bad habit pretty shortly after I got him. I wanted to use him, but it's like he has all these special attacks, but his special attack's terrible.
Yes.
Like it's just like because I kept on using him. Like, why is he doing like no? Oh, that's why. And then I stopped using him.
So are we allowed to talk about how you get a hold of Crabrawler since it's early on in the game?
I believe so.
Can.
Okay, so Neal let me know that to get Crabrawler, you find berries on the ground, and sometimes when you dig through berries, a Crabrawler will come out. Well, there are berry trees all over the game, so I would recommend going to a place that's before the embargo, so we're allowed to talk about it, where you can dig into berries and find a much higher level Crabrawler, and then he will have more physical moves and then an attack power to boot.
Right.
Yeah.
But Crabrawler Crabrawler's on my team. I like Crabrawler.
Yeah, he's a guy that I'm gonna revisit later. It's just that I had to wait until I could just like throw him in a party and then watch him go up in levels later on in the game, so that way I can get him out of his funk.
Yes. I mean, there are still Pokemon I've encountered them, but I don't have them in my boxes yet, which is Mimikyu and Pyukumuko, which I still want to catch, but because of the Pokemon game I chose, which is Pokemon Moon, I would have to play during the day if I wanted to catch a Mimikyu, so that will be a bit difficult.
Okay, as far as maybe we can talk more after the show. I haven't seen a Mimikyu at all. Is that just later on, or
have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, we don't need to go into detail on that.
Okay.
I just didn't know if I missed it by not playing it at the right time of day or something.
Neal, everything you think you'll miss, you'll find in this game. Like we were talking about how there were certain Pokemon we were anxious that we wouldn't find. If you're worried, don't worry. If you haven't come across it yet, you'll come across it later, especially if it's one of the cool ones.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Pyukumuko I've encountered because I did a minigame which they discussed pre-release, but I have not found a way to catch one yet.
I caught one by just surfing over some water at one point. And I went straight in my box and I never touched it again after I caught it. I just like the name because this game has the best Pokemon names out of any Pokemon game ever. You got Type Null, you got Tapu Koko, which is the first Pokemon name with 2 words. Which I were allowed to mention the fact he exists because he was revealed very early on, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And I just think the Pokemon names are this time around. It feels like if there was something they were scared of changing, even little stuff, it feels like Pokemon went ahead and changed it. The HMs they took away. The trainer battles, they made that more dynamic, and that like a trainer can turn around in the way a person would, and then it'll challenge you to a battle because it saw you over his shoulder. Stuff like what I was just talking about with Pokemon stuff. I don't know. This game is a very different Pokemon game, and I think that makes it feel like the freshest Pokemon games in years and years and years and years and years.
I agree. I think, Don might disagree with us, but I think, Alex, you and I are in agreement that this is our favorite Pokemon game since Black and White. And
it's my favorite 3DS Pokemon game.
Yeah, for me, like, I think I'm the one that's slightly lagging behind. I have not finished it yet, but Sun and Moon is tracking the same or better as Black and White is.
But even if I don't think like Sun and Moon are the best Pokemon games, who cares? It's still a good Pokemon game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's about, in your opinion, Don, it's about an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and an 8 out of 10 is still really good. Still a really good score.
This game is not lazy. If there's one thing I can say about this game, it's not lazy at all.
It's very ambitious, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't have a problem with the things they're trying to be very ambitious in, but overall, I think it's a really ambitious game.
One might say the most ambitious Pokemon game since the original Pokemon games. I won't say the best, just the most ambitious.
I would say the most ambitious game since Gold and Silver.
I could see that argument just because they stuffed 2 regions in one game.
Yeah.
But those are the 3. If we're talking 3 most ambitious Pokemon games, Sun and Moon ranks easily.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, is there anything else we need to talk about for Pokemon Sun and Moon?
I think that might be it. Kind of final thoughts, guys. Anything that you can mention and want to before we go?
After Friday, there was one Pokemon you're going to see me and Neal gushing over.
Yeah.
And I want to know who that Pokemon is. You'll have to tell me after the show.
We'll talk after the show.
But it was really great to finally use the circle pad and not feel limited by walking around.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that, I kind of want to go back and play a little bit of X and Y or an earlier game, because it didn't even register with me that that freedom of movement was there when I've been playing Sun and Moon. It just it feels modern finally.
X and Y does it a little bit, but they kind of half-ass it, and that you can only be in 360-degree movement on the roller skates, and even then it's not perfect. Yeah. This game has no compromises, full 360-degree.
It's wonderful. I love this game.
I like the shit out of it so far. And once I do the post game, I will have a far better understanding of how I feel about it. At the very least, I will say
I had a solid time. I will say that. Who cares? I had a solid time.
In X and Y and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, I kind of felt like Pokemon was getting away from what I like in a Pokemon game, in the sense that it was clearly skewing to a younger audience. It was getting way easier. The games were so insanely polished that it felt like they were almost made by a factory in X and Y and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire to me. It didn't have...
I still really enjoyed Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire a lot.
Okay.
But I don't understand. I can see that counter argument.
It feels so polished and safe and made by a committee, and not made in a boardroom, but made by an enormous team, that it didn't feel like there was as much personality.
I think that Delta episode is one of the best things in story-wise of a Pokemon game.
It was a wonderful 90 minutes.
Yeah. But it's still the best wonderful 90 minutes maybe of the entire Pokemon franchise.
Sun and Moon, while not perfect, were the first games to sort of light a spark in my heart for this whole Pokemon thing in years and years and years. Like a genuine spark, the kind of spark I haven't felt in maybe 5-6 years. Sun and Moon was the first games to reignite that. And I think now that they're getting less safe, I am so excited to see what the future of Pokemon looks like.
For me, from a personal perspective, because I'm a bit less on the downside of it, I'm interested to see what they will do next with the foundation that they've built.
Yeah, because now they've realized the X and Y engine to its full potential, and now we're left to see where they build from that. Because what's next is, I think we got to see a Switch game next.
I was just gonna bring that up as how we close this. There's been a lot of buzz. Well, I mean, Game Freak has come out and said that they're working on Switch games. I guess Switch game. I don't think they
Wait, Pokemon Company or Game Freak?
Or no, there's a Pokemon Company.
Okay.
People who
but
work on
I
Pokemon games.
I can also say that MCV UK had a rumor that Zelda, Pokemon, and Mario would arrive in the first 6 months of the system. What I can tell you is that report is very close to accurate.
Ooh, sexy.
Do we? I wonder if it's a Sun and Moon port or if they do something else.
I've
heard
some stuff that maybe it's a Sun and Moon sequel. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't heard too much about that.
I think it's the third game of Sun and Moon.
Okay. I'll play Sun and Moon again.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I'll play Sun and Moon again as like a Sun and Moon with like 20% more content. I'll do that in like a year.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think. I don't know. Don and I think have talked to different people about this potentially. I don't know.
Yeah, we have.
But yeah, no, I have heard some things that. Well, I mean, we know that the Pokemon Company and I think Game Freak, like they are working on a game for Switch. And I guess maybe we'll find out on January 12th. Maybe we'll find out later. I don't know. But I kind of expect to see a Sun and Moon, like a third game, a sequel, whatever. I kind of expect that to be on Switch in the next year or two.
You know what would be awesome? The first Switch Pokemon game to be a new remake of Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow.
That would be real dope.
With the Sevi Islands and just a little more, and then you do the Sun and Moon engine, but all HD and shit. And you know that Pokemon like actually goes all in on these 3D models, at least for the Pokemon, so they'll probably translate relatively easily.
Mm-hmm.
I think a Kanto Pokemon game would
I
be
do
lit.
like maybe Game Freak is just working on Tembo the Badass Elephant port to Switch. Props to Klex Loshi.
They're making that sequel to that Britain game on 3DS.
You know what Game Freak is great at? Making Pokemon games. You know what Game Freak isn't great at? Making everything not involving Pokemon and solitaire horses.
Yes. I liked Harmonite.
Harmonite was fun. You know what was more fun though? Drill Dozer.
Drill Dozer was awesome. Did you ever play Drill Dozer, Alex?
I never played Drill Dozer, but I don't like Tembo the Badass Elephant very much at all.
I'm
Dozer's really good.
That you didn't play Drill Dozer.
Does it have a lot of Pokemon stuff in it? Like not Pokemon literally, but I mean, does my like of Pokemon carry over to Drill Dozer at all?
Your like of good video games probably should.
No, but I'm saying like the stuff Game Freak is good at, like their attitude in games, like their writing, the stuff Game Freak does that's not Pokemon,
Alex,
but it's the stuff that makes up Pokemon's personality.
Actually, let me say this. This game originally never came out in Europe. I imported the copy when it came out on GBA back in the day, and I loved it so much I had to also have a Japanese copy in box.
Okay.
It's a really good game. It's on Wii U Virtual Console.
Yeah.
Okay.
For $6 or something.
Maybe I'll play it. You know what? Maybe I'll play it. I'm always down for new Game Freak game. Maybe I'll play it.
But yeah, so that does it for our Pokemon Sun and Moon review discussion. Stay tuned to Nintendo News Report. We will assuredly be talking about this game for a while because it's not like Nintendo has that much else happening until January. I guess there's Super Mario Maker for 3DS. But yeah, so we'll be talking about it on Nintendo News Report. You can follow us here on this YouTube channel. You can also visit us online at NintendoWorldReport.com. You can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/NWR. Support that so that like we can keep on doing this website and this YouTube channel and all that jazz. I'm Neal Ronaghan. You can find me on Twitter at NRON10. I'm also joined by Alex Culafi, who can be found on Twitter at Culafia, Culafia. We have Daan Koopman, who can be found on Twitter at Nintendon. And Don also has his own YouTube channel, Nintendon. So
Nintendon 1.
Nintendon 1. Is that because the old Nintendon got destroyed or something?
It got destroyed by YouTube.
Yeah. So
Back in
Nintendon
2008.
1. check out Daan's stuff, and
Yeah, I'm busy working with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
ooh, little Famicom mini action.
Ooh.
I might do a review on this. I have not decided. I might do a review on this because there are 10 different games on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, so that's the show. Thank you so much for watching, and bye everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.